Hey, I'm back in the shop today. I have a good friend that had a need for a small dining table. This is 36 inches round. It's made from hickory. It's very hard, very heavy. It was a lot of fun. Stick around and I'll show you how I built it. So I've got a printout of a different picture of that table. It's similar to that. And I know the clarity and everything in this picture is horrible, but that's okay. We don't really need to get too much information. What I'm going to do is just figure out kind of the dimensions of what I want to build. It doesn't matter what size this table is. I know that we want to have a 36-inch diameter top on it, and we want it to be 30 inches tall. Okay, so I've got this picture and I'm going to make some marks on it. I've already actually made some marks on this. I'm going to use this scale here. It really doesn't matter which one you use on here, but I'm going to go ahead and use this one because the edges of that lines up with about 28, and so that's a good number for me to use. And so down here I've made a scale. I know that this is 28 and that's going to equal 36 inches. The next one up here, that's half of that, so that's going to be 18 inches, of course 14 on our scale. And then half of that again takes us to 7 on our scale, which is going to be 9 inches. And so I'm going to kind of use those just to kind of help me remember and whatnot. The distances that I want to know is between the outside bottom tips of the feet, and that was 22 on our scale, roughly. And then I also want to know, we have this center hub here that all the legs attach to, and I'm going to assume that's about 3 inches or so and stuff. I may get a measurement on that. I can make that kind of whatever I want and kind of go off of that. But I also want to know what the edge of there out to the tip of our legs are as well, pretty close. And so that's somewhere between 9 and 10. So what I need to do is actually figure out what these are in inches. And so here's, okay, so I've got a little bit of math here. What we want to figure out is, we're going to start with this 22. That's, of course, 22 on our scale. We want to see how many inches that is. And so school was a little over 30 years ago for me, but this was something that I've remembered, and I use this periodically at times throughout my life. So we know that 28 on our scale, we want that to equal 36 inches. And now we know that 22 on our scale, we don't know what that equals, so that's our variable, that's x. And so we're just going to cross multiply this. I'm sure there's somebody out there that can tell me an easier way to do this. The 22 times 36 equals 792. So we got 792 and then 28x. And then we're just going to divide out the 28 here, and then we'll divide out the 28 here. So 792 divided by 28 equals 28.28. So we know that 22 on our scale equals about 28.25 inches, give or take. Okay, and then I went ahead and did the math for the 9 on our scale as well, and that comes out to about 11.5 inches, just a little bit over that, 11.6 almost. And so we don't need to be exact. That gives us a pretty close. And so from there, I kind of know the dimensions that I want to know in order to design and build the base. Okay, so with those numbers that we figured out, I'm going to go ahead and just take this picture here and our numbers, and I'm going to just draw up a full-scale template. I'm using either some 1/4-inch plywood or maybe some MDF or something, and I'll just make a full-scale template of our leg.
Okay, so we'll see those full-scale templates as we go through our project here. Right now I'm going to go ahead and take some of our hickory and mill it up and run this through the joiner and flatten one side. And then I went ahead and ran that through the planer as well to flatten the other side and give me a parallel edge. And then here's a couple of our templates that we made, and we're just going to outline those pieces onto our block of wood. And I'm making a line there. I'm going to leave a piece on there which will kind of be a notch. It'll help me clamp that up later on. You'll see me do that. And at the bandsaw, I'm going to go ahead and cut off some of the waste. I'm going to cut those pieces out of that block of wood, and then just cut off some of the waste that we don't need at this point. And that's that notch that I'm needing for clamping. So here I'm lining up the miter saw with that edge of the leg there. And we want to make that as accurate as we can to that line. It doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, but if we can get pretty close, that'll be great. We're going to use that edge to make some further cuts here in just a few minutes. And that will be the edge that we work from. And then what you saw me cut out was just the center portion of those legs. That's where the two legs will glue into the center. And so we're going to do that with a bridle joint. And I'm just using my tenoning jig here to cut out that center groove. And that is a pretty big cut. So I took it really slow. I know this looks faster. I've kind of sped that up. And then I flipped that around both directions to make sure that that is absolutely centered in the blank. And so now we're back to our leg portions, and we're working off that straight edge that we cut at the miter saw. And we're going to make some shoulder cuts to create the tenon part of our bridle joint. And then I'm just using a tall jig on my fence here to make the cheek cuts on that tenon. And these were some pretty big deep cuts, and so I just took it slow. I actually cut that just a little bit wide. With this hickory it was very hard, and I found that if I cut that just a little bit wide and then I went back and just trimmed a little bit, I got a better cut out of it. And so back to the bandsaw, and we're going to remove more of the waste. This little trick I learned several years ago to use the joiner to taper legs. As you can see, I've got a stop block attached to the joiner there, and I ran the tapered end through first and then turn it around with the stop block removed and then run the whole piece through there, putting pressure down on the tapered end. And the joiner is set to half of the taper. And then we're going to go ahead and put a little glue and glue up our pieces of our leg. And you'll see those notches that we use for our clamp. And then we'll check that with our template. And so we're going to go ahead and trace that out again now that we have it glued together. And back to the bandsaw, and we'll cut off some more waste.
Okay, so I've finished cutting out our waste off of our pieces at the bandsaw here. And so we've got everything pretty close to our outline and our drawing here. And so now I've also taken my template and I've used some double-sided tape to tape that to our stock, to our piece that we're going to cut. And that brings me to a new tool in my shop. And to be honest, I'm a little bit excited, scared for this one. I've been looking for a reason to purchase one of these and try it out for a while, and I figured this was the project to do that. This is from Spee Tools. I believe that's how you say it. I've never ordered anything from them before, but this seems to be a nice high quality bit. We're going to try this out and see how it goes. Being a brand new bit with all these carbide inserts, I'm going to go ahead and check every one of them, make sure they're all tight before I use this. But so far it looks pretty good, and we're going to see how it goes. So a couple of times a year I get up on the roof of my house and I get up there and do some cleaning out of my gutters and whatnot. I usually take my backpack blower with me, so I like to always tell my wife that if you hear any screaming or a thump, you better investigate. So that applies here.
That is a lot of bit exposed, but I felt like in this case I wanted the template on the bottom. So that's the way I did it. In full disclosure, we had some screaming and a thump. That really looks worse than it actually was. I didn't have my camera running when that happened. I was just doing one of my other legs, and
yeah, that happened. Okay, so that there is definitely a little bit of a learning curve on that. Most of it turned out pretty good. I've got a nice smooth cut. I did get a little bit of chip out right here. You know, we are working with some hard hickory, you know, and so that's maybe to some extent what we got there. And then on this side, we had some pretty bad tear out and whatnot. I'm not quite sure what happened there, other than just, again, it's hickory, it's very hard, and probably a little bit of technique there. But I think I'm gonna put another leg in onto my template here and try it one more time to see. I probably will need to make a new leg here. I got a little bit too much damage right there, and then some chip out here. But we're gonna give it one more try. Okay, so that was the second leg I did, and that turned out better. I was a little more careful and was able to get that cut out pretty good. So, yeah, like I said, I'm not quite sure what kind of a recommendation I'd give on this bit, but you know, being as we're using such a hard wood, hickory and stuff like that, the things that I noticed is you don't want to be trimming off very much, so cut as close to your line as you can with your bandsaw and clean up most of that waste that you can. I'm going to go back. I got 2 more legs to do here still. I'm going to cut those back just a little bit farther, closer to the line, and then just real slow, real careful, and we're able to get those done.
While I'm at the router table, I figured this was a good time to round over the portions of the leg that we wanted to. Being very careful not to round over the bottom of the foot and the part that will attach to the table. And here at the table saw, we're going to make a tenon on our leg assembly here that will fit into a mortise on the center hub. And this was just kind of by trial and error a little bit. This was just what I thought may be the best way to do that. So we cut those shoulders on the table saw using various techniques with the miter gauge and the fence, and then just knocking off a little bit with the bandsaw. And then I made this jig to give me a template for the router to cut the mortise out of the center hub. And it creates quite a mess, so we clean that out periodically and then cut that mortise. And that gives us our center hub. We'll go ahead and square up those corners. It's a little spring-loaded corner chisel that I have, and it's one of my favorite tools that I like to use. And I'm happy with that fit, and so we went ahead and test fit all the legs together. So we're back to more of our rough stock, cutting and milling those pieces up for our tabletop. And so I've just got those set together in the orientation that I've decided to go with, and I'm making some marks. And I'm just using this chain to draw me a rough outline of the table to give me the circumference, and to make a few marks for biscuits. And we're going to make sure those biscuits are well inside the line of the circumference of the table. And we're just using those for alignment. And I glued up half of the table at a time, just to make it a little easier. And then I'll go ahead and glue those halves together.
Okay, so I'm getting ready to drill a hole for our adjustable foot here for our legs. And so I've made this jig. It's just a nice heavy block of just a scrap that I had sitting around, and it's nice and thick. And so what that's designed to do is just help me drill a straight square hole into the bottom of the foot here. And so what we're going to do, of course, I've marked the tape so it'll come through just about where I want it to and drill into the leg as far as we want to go. And this will just sit in the jig like this. And I'll have it all propped up on the table and everything where I need it. And then I'll just go ahead and hold that, and I will drill that into the leg to give us a hole for a threaded insert. And I am going a little extra deep because I am going to cut a 1/4 inch off this still to bring our legs where we want them to. But I'm going to go ahead and drill the hole first. And so we'll go ahead and get that done.
This process was a little bit tricky, but it ended up working really good. And here I'm going to go ahead and trim off the top of the leg.
Okay, so we're going to get started today inlaying our C channel underneath the top here. And we finally got this in. It took a little bit of time to get this here, but we're going to use this C channel to just kind of help stabilize this top and keep it flat. And so I've gone ahead and I've marked out the center lines on our table in both directions. And then I've marked out a line where I want the C channel to go. And I've made sure that's parallel. And that's kind of why I haven't cut the circle or anything out yet, because it gives me square edges and stuff to line those up. And so what I've done is I've just kind of positioned that where I want it. I've made my marks, and I'm going to set that C channel in there where I want it. And then I'm just going to take this is just MDF. I'm going to slide this up to that. And we're going to clamp that down here. And then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to use a spacer, some cardstock basically. We're just inch. Our channel is about an 1/8 inch thick, just a little bit under that. So we're going to go about an 1/8 inch. That'll be perfect. And that will allow that to be flush under the top. So we'll get going on that.
So I went ahead and just cut that with using a small pattern bit. And where that was only about 1/8 of an inch deep, it was pretty easy to cut. Did take some time. Just went slow using that bit on that hickory again. And then we'll square up those corners in that as well. And here I put some more straight edges, clamp those down to the table again to cut the deeper grooves for the edges of the C channel. And with the test fit, we like that. We'll go ahead and mark for the placement of the screws and our threaded inserts. And I'm just using that thick piece of wood as a drill guide to drill those holes for the threaded inserts. Give those a little bit of a chamfer on the edge, and then we'll go ahead and use a little bit of super glue and attach those inserts. Now we're on to finally cutting the circle out, and this ended up being quite a labor-intensive task. I think I ended up making about 7 revolutions to cut all the way through that using a 1/4 inch spiral cut bit. And I just did really shallow passes, went really slow. And it did take some time, but it did cut through there. And it made a good cut. And periodically I'd stop and vacuum up some mess and vacuum out the chips out of the cut, out of the groove. And on the final pass, I left tabs so that it would not move as we finished the cut. And if you look closely there, you can see those tabs as I clean that cut out. And then I just went ahead and used this little saw to cut those tabs off. And we have a circle. I'll go ahead and use a flush trim bit just to knock those tabs off. And we're going to drill some more holes for some threaded inserts to attach the base. A little more super glue with those threaded inserts. So I've made this cross piece to attach to the top of the base, and that's going to give us the ability to attach that to the table. I'm just going to use some more of the polyurethane glue and some screws to attach that to the base. So I made sure and pre-drilled all of those holes, and then we're just going to round over these edges on the router table just to soften them up. And a little file work to get into the corner there to round that over. So I'm going to go ahead and I've used a 1/4 inch bit to round over the top and the bottom edges of the tabletop. And then we spent a lot of time doing some sanding and getting that smooth, and we'll go ahead and apply a finish. This is a hard wax oil. We'll go ahead and buff it on. I let that sit for a few minutes and then we'll wipe it off.
So there it is, our small dining table. I think this will fit the space that it's going in real well. It was a lot of fun to build this one. There was some challenges along the way. Working with Hickory, if you've ever worked with that before, you know that it's very hard, very heavy. It really requires sharp tooling and those kind of things to build with. But I think it turned out good, and I think my friend here will be very pleased with these tables. So hopefully you enjoyed that video. It was certainly enjoyable for me. Thank you for sticking around this long. Thank you if you didn't stick around this long. You just probably didn't get to see me thank you. So if you enjoyed what you watched and would like to subscribe to my channel, that's great. That really helps me out. I'd like to keep bringing more of these builds to you guys. And if you share it with anybody you know that might be interested in watching it, that would be great too. Comment below if you have any questions or anything that you'd like to say about the table. I'd like to hear from you and what you guys think about my builds. And again, thanks for watching.